Hi, this is Dr. Richard Ruling here to share with you on the Total Health channel again. We've been looking at the seals from Revelation 6, and we've spent a little time on the fourth seal linked to the papacy because it is a pale horse representing disease and death. And during the Dark Ages, bubonic plague, smallpox ravaged the cities of Europe often, and it seems to be a natural contextual link. We looked at how the papacy changed God's laws, or thought to change. It says he shall think to change God's laws in Daniel 7 verse 25. But there are additional changes that we haven't looked at, and we want to look at them today. If I were to say to you, what time is it? You would maybe look at your watch and say, it's noon, which is the time of this recording. But really, time fits a broader perspective. This happens to be the 5th day of February, and the year is 2019, but really we're using a papal calendar, a Gregorian calendar, and in Bible times they weren't using that. It was a different perspective. In Exodus 12 verse 2, God meets with Moses, and he says, Moses was looking at the sky, and he said, this is the beginning of the month, the first month of the year to you. And the word in Hebrew in that text 3 times is chodesh, spelled chodesh. If you were to go to Google Images and type in that word, chodesh, chodesh, you would see a thin crescent moon. And I don't believe Moses was staring at a blank sky, but when you look on the calendar today and you see new moon, it's giving you the dark of the moon when you can't see anything. There's no moon in the sky. It comes from NASA and astronomy. It's when the moon passes between the earth and the sun. It's in a conjunction, so it cannot be seen. Well, point is, actually maybe it's the earth passes between the moon and the sun and is not reflected. The point is, however, that the beginning of the month, according to Bible, is when they could see the crescent. Like in Psalm 81 verse 3, blow up the trumpet in the new moon. Were they staring at a blank sky? I don't think so. And I have seen some major events in my lifetime, looking back to 2008 when the stock market crash began. On the 7th month, I saw the new moon in the sky, the crescent, and that night Congress approved $786 billion in bailout, and the stock market crashed for 10 days. This was a modern counterpart to the Feast of Trumpets. The Feast of Trumpets began on the new moon, and 10 days they blew trumpets, and then the Day of Atonement. Well, it was maybe at 1 month for the economy, or should have been, except that Congress was bailing out the banks. The banksters, really they deserve to lose their money, not to get it back from taxpayers. But we won't going to go into politics right now. The point was, though, major economy event. And I think, as my favorite author says in Desire of Ages, it's in the chapter on the Mount of Olives, that coming events cast their shadow before. Not sure what page, might be 586, whatever. The point is that coming events cast their shadow before, and that stock market crash in 2008 is an omen, I think, of a later huge event when in the first trumpet sounds on the Feast of Trumpets, first day of the 7th month, and sometime soon, after a huge earthquake in Revelation 8:5, there will be a complete crash of the economy. I think that's my interpretation when it says all the green grass burned up. If all the green grass were burned up, we'd be finished. We wouldn't need any more trumpets, because if everything on the earth, green grass burned up, we'd be done. And the grains are grasses, by the way. Wheat grass, the rice is made from a grass, barley, oats are grasses. So, not good. I think the interpretation is spiritual, like in James 1, 9-11. In the King James Bible, it says, as the flower of the grass, so shall the rich man fade. And so I think it's riches, it's the economy that will be blown when the trumpets begin, just like the first plague in Egypt affected the Nile River, if you recall. The Nile was their economy. It watered their gardens and so on. And I think the economy will be blown when this world sees an earthquake, I think this spring we could see it. So, returning again to the significance of the calendar, there's a bigger significance that I think we've seen, and specifically, remembering the rule of first use that we said that Christ in Revelation 1:11 said, "I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last," and He's also the Word. Go to where a word or phrase is first found. It has a significance, interesting details. God seemed to do the Bible that way, encoding things, information at the time of the first use. When a concept comes along, He wanted us to understand what it meant. Well, if I were to ask you, where do you find the word Sabbath first? Maybe most Adventists might not know. We think, it's in Genesis 1 or 2, when God created the world in 6 days. But no, the word Sabbath is not there. And it's not, the first time is not found in the Ten Commandments. It's found in Exodus 16, after they came out of Egypt, and God met with Moses on the 15th day. It said they entered this wilderness, and God spoke to Moses, verses 4 or 5, and said, after they were complaining about no flesh pots of Egypt and so on, God says, I'm going to give you manna. 6 days I'm going to give you manna. The 7th day there'll be no manna. And in verse 22 and 23, there was a double portion that fell on the preparation day. It didn't say Friday. The words were not named in the Bible, and preparation day and Sabbath were the only two named days. It was first day, second day, third day. But on the preparation day, double portion, and then the Sabbath is found in the verse 23. The point is, though, that this was 7 days after the 15th. It was the 22nd. It doesn't say it was the 22nd, but it was the sequence, 7th day from when God said. And my point is that this is a clue for the fact that the Sabbath fell on the 15th and 22nd, 7 days apart. And if you go to Leviticus 23 in the 11th verse, we find that the Passover on the 15th day of the month, unleavened bread, was also a 7th day Sabbath. The strong 7676 refers to 7th day or 7th year, when the land was also rested. And my point, though, is that in Leviticus 23 it's talking about the first month of Abib, or the month of Passover, and in Exodus 16 it was the second month when they came out of Egypt and entered the wilderness, and it was also on the 15th. And if you look at your calendar, unless your calendar has 28 days, the Sabbath cannot fall on the 7th day, the same month, month after month. We have 29 and a half days in the lunar calendar. It takes that long for the moon to go around the sun. And my point is that you cannot have the Sabbath on the 15th day of 2 months in a row, like I just shared from you from Scripture, unless you're counting from the new moon. That when God said to Moses, this is the beginning of the month, the beginning of the year, it was also the beginning of the weeks, for a new month. And it's owing to the papal departure from it that we think the Sabbath is just every 7 days, every 7 days, every 7 days from creation. You cannot find that in the Bible. You cannot find that in Ellen White. It's an assumption that we have had, but we aren't looking at the papal calendar and the changes that it brought, and a close look at Scripture. And support for what I'm sharing with you is found in the fact that Christ, when He was in the grave on Sabbath, John 19 verse 31 says it was a high day. High day because it was a 7th day Sabbath as well as a Passover Sabbath. When they coincided, it was considered a high day. Now, could have been just coincidence maybe, but God, I think, designed it so that there would be no coincidence in that particular year. It was that way every year, that Sabbath on the 15th day of the month, of the first month, Abib, was a 7th day Sabbath and a Passover Sabbath. But I'm sharing with you from Exodus 16th chapter that the second month was also that way. And so they're counting from a new moon. A new moon was observed like a Sabbath and then they worked 6 days and rested the seventh day, which was the 8th. The 8th, the 15th, the 22nd of the months were seventh-day Sabbaths, historically, and the 29th. And then they had a new moon again. New moons were sort of a time for special social occasions. In 1 Samuel 20, David is talking to Jonathan and says, if I missed at the new moon tomorrow when Saul has his celebration of the new moon, if he's angry, then it's bad news for me. You know, that means he was wanting me to come so he could kill me, basically. And there was a little discussion between David and Jonathan there. Again, the new moon is referenced in 2 Kings 4, and I'm forgetting right now what that reference was, but the point is that God had ordained. Oh, it was the lady who was blessed by Elisha. And Elisha said she didn't have a son, but Elisha promised she would have a son. And then the son got sick, deathly sick, and apparently died. And she said to her husband, "Quick, send a messenger to Elisha to come. My son is deathly ill." And the dad says, "Well, this is neither new moon nor Sabbath, okay?" But she says, "Send him anyway. Go ahead." Well, the new moon or Sabbath were times when you could approach the prophet. It's probably a time when the women brought their children to Jesus, Yeshua, in the New Testament to be blessed. And those times were also, maybe, as one of my Bible teachers, Leslie Harding, said, a time when women look forward to the curse of their monthly being gone and ended. So monthly view of social occasions with Saul and the feast days in conjunction with the Sabbath were celebrations. And after the new moon day of the month, then a week later was Sabbath, a week later a Sabbath, a seventh-day Sabbath, and so on. I'm sharing this, I don't think it's a test of fellowship. I go to church on Saturday, the Sabbath, last week. It's an opportunity to share and exchange ideas. I think we should mingle with people, try to share truth. But tonight, this happens to be a new moon. If you're living where there's no clouds, we got a lot of cloud today, and I don't know if I'll see it tonight, but the moon tonight should be a thin crescent. And tomorrow would be the new moon day. And a week later would be a seventh-day Sabbath, my opinion, okay? And it might be protective ultimately in the end time when it says in Daniel 12, verse 7, that there will be a scattering of the holy people. That's an echo of what Christ said his last night. His last night at Passover, it was a microcosm of end-time events, and he said, "All you will be offended this night because of me. Because it is written," it was in Zechariah, "Smite the shepherd, the sheep will be scattered." And his disciples were scattered that night. And we, for the end time, in Daniel 12:7, is like that. David Gates online cites an unrecorded vision, and I've seen that in paper written, that there will be a sudden storm of persecution, and not hardly an Adventist will be seen. And after that, the leaders were not seen at all. So my point is, could be bad news, but if you're honoring a lunar Sabbath, counting from the moon, they might not know who you are, where you are. We might not be able to fellowship in large congregations like we have, and may be spared something. So just an interesting thought, and thank you for considering this. Ask you to give it a look at the Bible. I know a friend, Arnold Boyer, sorry, I'm blocking on his last name now, in Conyers, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. Been to his house, and he would offer $1,000 if you can find any scriptural proof of a seventh-day Sabbath on any day except the 8th, 15th, 22nd, or 29th. There are numerous. I've given you a couple right now today. There are other occasions in the Bible where it does identify the 15th as a seventh-day Sabbath. but on no other day than synchronizing with 8, 15, 22, or 29. I would give you $100. I could afford that if you can find it, but I don't think you will. Thank you for considering this. God bless you. Look forward to more information tomorrow. We'll look at the fifth seal. Important information. Again, this is the fifth seal, souls under the altar, persecuted, and we'll talk about that then. Thank you for, please like this if you do, if you find it interesting, even if you might not agree. We should like new information to consider. It's a challenge, like the Bereans who searched to see if the Scripture supported it. And God bless you. We'll see you then again